Wil Brawley. Welcome to everybody in Charlotte.
What's up?
What's up?
All right.
All right, here we go. So anybody that follows everybody in Charlotte, or me, or you, or us, knows that we're connected, knows that we not only are in business together, but also friends. Maybe they know that we're friends. I don't know. If they don't, you and I grew up in the same neighborhood.
Not far away.
I mean, literally less than a mile. Who'd you play for? Mutual? Who'd you play for in Little League?
No. Oh my gosh.
Cameron Harris?
No. How can I? Me and Hyder were on the same team.
Hyder was
It was
Christchurch.
Christchurch. Coach Wade.
How about the
Landis
memory on that?
That's good. Yep. That's impressive. That is impressive.
There is a lot of reference to people I know and grew up with to Little League. Because it was just such, like, 9 years old to 12 years old. It was just that period where I don't remember much before 9 years old, and my memory really starts around those years.
Yeah. Yep.
And Alan Hyder was a good friend of mine during those years. So I remembered who his team was.
Yep. So you guys were... So you're... Yeah, okay.
I was Prop 45.
Yeah.
And then TR Lawing. It switched while I was there.
Okay. Do they still is that league still running?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. We're going to dive into podcasting today.
Yeah.
Because you are one of my most loyal clients. Simply because, well, for multiple reasons. One is you've been doing podcasting since before the word podcast was even invented.
Yeah.
And secondly, because of that, you subsequently understand the value and are fully bought in. And as some evolution is occurring inside of your business that you have a podcast that's related to, you've obviously shared with me where you're looking to take the podcast medium as that transition occurs. So let's dig into kind of maybe all of that. We can break it up into pieces, but let's start with your beginning in the, I would call it podcasting, but back when you were doing it, it was essentially recording interviews. So what started you there? Why?
So my business, Schedulefly, we've been doing this. We have restaurant employee scheduling software, right? And we serve mostly independent restaurants. And we started the business back in 2007, and we bootstrapped it. And I mean, we didn't have money to even pay ourselves, much less go out and pay for advertising and doing all the things that you would do if you're trying to grow your brand, particularly in a software business. And I was trying to figure out, like, what are some creative ways that we can spread awareness about our brand without having to spend a lot of money. And we had a blog, and our blog was like, hey, we added this feature, which who cares? I mean, nobody cared. It was, like, who's going to read that blog? Nobody cares that we added this feature or that feature, or that we're doing, this new thing that we're doing at Schedulefly with our software. So we thought, okay, well, what if we highlighted the people that we serve on our blog and tell their stories? Because if we do that, we're giving something back to the community we serve, which is restaurants, by providing education and inspirational content, right? So I start calling these restaurant owners and doing these like 10 or 15 minute conversations, and then writing summaries of what I learned from those restaurant owners. But I always felt like when you read in your voice, right? And so, but I would think, okay, there's no way for me to write the inflection that, like, Scott Maitland at Top of the Hill in Chapel, like when I ask him a question and it happens to be a question that makes him come alive, and you hear him come alive, I can't capture that and articulate that in the written word.
God, that's well said. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, we've got to find a better way. And so I would start calling and asking, can I record this conversation? And people are like, okay, sure. What are you going to do with it? I'll be like, we're going to embed it on our blog. And so that's what we started doing is we would, I would still write a summary, but I'd be like, listen to this conversation. And so we would literally embed an audio file into the blog.
Hmm.
And this is like in 2009, 2010 ish. I mean, we were doing this, pretty early on, and that led to us. I mean, Robbie, that led to us self-publishing a book called Restaurant Owners Uncorked, and that was a compilation of 20 interviews that I had done that I thought these are smart restaurant owners. They have great stories. They have great wisdom. They have great inspiration to pass along. And we self-published this thing. Meanwhile, we're recording these audio files. And then I thought, okay, we need to get these folks on film. It's funny that you and I are talking and you're such a Chapel Hill guy, and I've got my Chapel Hill Blues shirt on today to honor that, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Because a lot of this starts, it all goes back to Scott Maitland, because Scott Maitland at Top of the Hill, who to this day is a good friend and a customer, he's so good at articulating what it takes to be a successful restaurant owner, right? So, and he's just so good at telling stories. He's smart, so he will educate you, he will inspire you, he will give you really good advice. So then I hire my buddy who does film work, Luke Pearson, and we go up and we start filming him talking about being a successful restaurant owner. So you've got audio, you've got video, you've got written, content. But I felt like in that situation, the very best, conversation should be on film, because that's when not only do you hear, but you see the person come alive and tell their story. And that's where and it's like watching a movie. Like that's the best way to consume like a story, right? It's the visual, the audio, all of it, all in one place. Well, so we're just like piecing together all this content and putting it out there. But this is in like 2010, 2011, 2012. There's just nobody's actually consuming anything then. Then I start listening to Tim Ferriss on his podcast. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Now this is cool. There's actually a place where you can put content and it gets distributed out by Apple. Like, can we do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of what led to us doing our podcast called Restaurant Owners Uncorked, and having a way to distribute content out to a large audience, not just through our blog and our website.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that time, it was just like, okay, well, we're doing audio podcasts and talking to restaurant owners, and I'm still going out with Luke, and we're trying to, film stuff. And, fast forward to today where this is all done in a place like your amazing studio where you can get the audio, you can get the video. Podcasts are no longer just, I'm driving around in my car listening to somebody. I might be sitting in my house watching a podcast, or I might be watching a clip of a podcast, which is 10, 30 seconds of a 3-hour Joe Rogan interview that I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'll go listen to that one.
Yep.
So this has all come to, what you all are doing here today.
Yeah.
And so, but that's sort of the long iteration of like how this got started. But the point being, I've always felt like if, we have a company, Schedulefly. I don't want to get on and talk about Schedulefly.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to the people I serve about what they do and give them a platform to share their story. That helps me build a stronger relationship with them. It helps us provide inspiring content to the industry we serve. It helps us build relationships with people that we would like to know, just as you've done. I mean, had Laird Hamilton on your podcast, a guy that, was sort of a hero years ago, and now you actually had him on the podcast. And so I am 1,000% bought in to content that you're creating being a very valuable tool for your business to help you grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for that recap. I think there's a few places we could dig in there. One that stands out is the content that you're intentionally creating, the message you're trying to send. And I love the fact that you brought up, we're not on here talking about scheduling software.
Right.
We're talking about all the other things involved in the industry that the software is a tool for.
Yep.
And so that's a cool area that we can dig into that I would love to. But first, I would love to go back and hear a little bit about what the value was, or when you started seeing the value as you were putting this out there. And by value, I guess you can define that. What is the
Yeah.
success? What does success look like?
That's such a great question, dude. That gets into a philosophical question, I think. I'm not a spreadsheet guy. So I'm not going to sit and look at numbers. I don't even know how many people listen to our podcast, to be
Yep.
perfectly honest. I know that for our business, we try to emulate the way that our customers run their businesses. So independent restaurants, what do independent restaurants do? They're going to, like really good ones, like a really good independent restaurant, they're going to have probably a pretty simple menu, and they're going to freaking execute on that really well, consistently. Okay. Same with our software. Simple, execute really well. Great independent restaurant's going to take incredible care of their customers. They're going to have a great experience. Every time you go in, you are going to have somebody that's intentional, that's present, that's authentic, that's genuine. They're not scripted, but they care and they're present and they're with you. You're always going to get that at a great independent restaurant. That's how we try to serve our customers. My personal cell phone number's on our website. Somebody can call me anytime and talk to me about Schedulefly, ask a question or whatever. We provide ridiculously good service. Again, modeled after what we see from our customers.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing that independent restaurants do, always, really good ones, they always give time, money, energy, food to their community. I mean, they're like first responders. Like what happened at the floods up in Western North Carolina? Restaurants that have been shut down and have are fighting for their lives are still out there giving their time and food and making food for people in the community and for firefighters and policemen. And it happened during COVID. It happened in Western North Carolina. It happened out in the LA fires. Like they are always there because they're naturally a giving people. Like what is hospitality? It's giving yourself to somebody else to make them feel welcome. Well, what we felt like is if we're giving content to our industry that helps educate people, inspire people. It may be somebody who's like, I want to own a restaurant one day and I'm going to listen to other people and learn from them and draw ideas from them or draw inspiration from them. It may be, and I have customers say this all the time, people listen to the podcast for therapy. They want to, you're an independent restaurant owner, you have got 1,000 things going on every day. You barely have time if you have time to listen to a podcast. You're so dialed in with so many things all the time. And you want to know that you're not the only one that's dealing with that because you're sitting there going, this is hard as hell. Like, am I insane to be doing this? And then you listen to some other owner articulating the same problems. You're like, oh, okay, so it's very therapeutic.
Yeah.
And so to get to your question, I don't know how to measure this. I don't know how. Don't really want to. I know that it's part of our ethos. It's what we want to do is provide something that matters to our community. Now, I believe very much in when you're building a brand, yes, your product has to work, your service has to be great, but is there something else there that's intangible that helps you create somewhat of a tribe, right?
Yep.
Like people are proud to be part of the Schedulefly community, not just because they like the software, not just because they like the service, but they know, our customers know that we create this content that helps them and helps people in the industry. And it matters to them. And our big, we're this bootstrap business. Our big venture funded competitors and private equity competitors, man, they don't do this stuff.
Yeah.
And so for the right audience, who's the right audience? It's a specific audience. And for that audience, this stuff matters.
Love it. Love it. All right. So, it's fun. It's so fun interviewing people. You listen and I'm in my own head. I'm soaking up what you're saying. And then, at one point it's like, shoot, what am I going to ask next? And then inevitably, every time something goes bing, and the bing for me in that one was, we work so frequently with clients around content creation, and what is your goal? What is your mission? What are you trying to establish? It's similar to the question I just asked. How do you measure success? Like, how do you measure ROI on this investment? It does cost money. And more times than not, the clients who are not looking at a spreadsheet, at the numbers, to equate the number they spent to the number that they're getting a return on and more, they're the ones who, if they go back and look at the numbers, they always are making some level of profit or return.
Yep.
Because they're doing it for the right reasons. And,
That's right.
And it's not a karma thing. It's what you exude in your communication when that's where you're coming from. It's authentic. It's real.
Yeah.
And people sense that. They can see it. They can hear it. If you're in here, with a scripted interview model trying to touch all these points because that's what you feel is going to get the right return and all. I hear you. There's a part of that in the right situation and scenario. I get that marketing has, an equation to it or an algorithm, but if you can, anyway, you see where I'm going.
Well, look, here's the thing. You got to, this is a long play, and you just got to believe in that is creating this type of content, or is this a growing or a dying opportunity for a business? I think it's pretty obvious it's a growing opportunity. More and more businesses are starting to realize that this is important. Look, we used to have, since I've been here, we had advertisers that would pay us because we have a big audience, and I got rid of that. I don't like, I can measure that, but I don't want people that are listening to this podcast to be stopping and listening. I'm not saying you shouldn't have advertisers. I'm just saying that for us, this model works differently for everybody else. The thing I can measure is less important to me than the experience that the guest has, that the listener has. And so all we do now is I just spend 30 seconds at the top. I talk about Schedulefly, and I say, here's what we do at Schedulefly, and that's it. And then we just go right into a conversation. There's no break in the episode and all that kind of stuff. So again, that's not necessarily the right formula. It's the right formula for us. But if you believe in having your brand associated with something bigger than just your product, this is a great way to do that. If you believe, I can't imagine a business. I've thought about this. Like, I can't imagine running a business in any industry, and there probably are some that I can't think of, but in my mind, I can't think of an industry that I might be in where I wouldn't want to have a podcast where I talk to my customers and share their story. Look, one of the most basic, fundamental human inclinations is that we want validation. Everybody wants validation. Everybody wants to feel important. And when you ask somebody to tell you their story, that makes them feel important. You're not doing it because you're doing it because you want to hear their story. But it makes a difference. I've learned that over time. Like, people that I used to call people, dude, when we started this, I'd be like, can I record our conversation? They were like, why? Like, what is this? And then we started doing a podcast, and people be like, yeah, I know I've heard of podcasts, but I don't know about talking about, and now it's like people are coming to us constantly asking, can we be on your podcast? I'm actually now having to filter. I only have so much time to do podcasts. But we have big brands in our industry who have PR agents who are contacting me daily. Can we have our CEO or our CXO of this huge franchise brand come on your podcast and share their story? People get it now. They get the importance of putting their brand out there through this type of content. But getting back to the point, if I were, selling financial advisory or something like that, like I'd probably have a podcast and talk to my customers about who they are and what they do. And because now people that listen to that go, I identify with, I'm like that person or whatever. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously I'm fully bought in.
Yeah.
Will it make money for your business over time? It will help grow your brand and it will help attract people to your brand. And yes, I'm 100%. We have customers that come in that say, I heard about y'all through listening to your podcast. And in fact, I had a guy recently who was on the podcast. He's like, dude, I listened to your podcast for years. And I kept thinking, I don't need scheduling software. I just use a spreadsheet. I finally decided to sign up for the free trial. Now I'm a customer. Now I can't believe I waited so long. And now he came on the podcast to share
Well,
his
there
story.
you go. Yeah. I mean, there's this we're in an interesting time right now, and it's obviously, as a business owner in this space, we do a lot of research and got our finger on the pulse of the trends and the demand and all the stuff. But what's happening in the public sector is that people are doing what they did still now today, but 5 and 10 years ago. If you come across a brand, you search them, you hear about it, you search them online, and often their social media will pop up. You often go to that, and they get validation through what their social media looks like.
Right.
Now, podcasting is
Yeah.
another validation kind of metric that people are looking for. They're not going out saying, all right, do they have a podcast? No, they don't. I'm not going with them. But if you do, it puts you a little bit ahead. It just is it's a validation metric, 100%.
100%.
Right?
But if you do it, I'm just kind of like either all in or all out on stuff. So, I think if you're going to do a podcast, do the podcast and
You're
don't
right.
just do a few episodes and go. I mean, we've had even like some advertisers. Like I had one at the end. That's why I stopped doing it. I had one at the end of the year. They advertised for like 2 months and they're like, oh, well, we don't see a direct call. I'm like, okay, this is spreadsheet people talk. I'm not doing that. Forget this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
nah. But you got to commit to doing it and you got to believe in it. And if you do believe in it and you are committed to doing it, I mean, karma, whatever you want to call it, like good things will come, but you got to stick with it. And it's just like building like a comprehensive marketing plan. Like you can't just go, oh, we ran one ad or we sent one email to 5,000 people and didn't get any return.
Consistency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a comic that goes into a club for years and years and years. And all of a sudden it's like, you're not famous overnight. It's lots of work and effort that builds. My buddy Bobby Martin wrote this book called The Blade Years, and he talks about entrepreneurship. And I think it's the same with podcasting or anything else. Like you think of a hockey stick. You talk about hockey stick growth. Like, well, the hockey stick is the blade years are those years where you're not seeing growth. You're moving along and you're moving along, and then all of a sudden it starts to get nonlinear and grow. But those blade years can be a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stick with it, it pays in dividends in many, many ways over time, for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the content creation in the sense of what you brought up early, where we're not talking about Schedulefly, we're not talking about scheduling software, we're talking about people, and we're talking about stories and experiences. And not only hearing theirs, but in those conversations, you're sharing yours as well. And so there is a level of thought leadership, call it, trust building. People want to know the face behind Schedulefly, and indirectly they're getting that.
Yep.
I mean, I think that is a huge value that people, it's not super upfront when you think about content and podcast creation. It can be a byproduct. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, that comes up often in the conversation. I've never gone into an episode, not once, with a script. I don't go in with like, I got to make sure to get this person to, and that's my style. That, again, that's not necessarily the right style. People have different. I mean, I was on a podcast in New York City a couple of weeks ago. I mean, it was like being on a freaking radio show. These dudes up in New York, at the Branded Hospitality podcast. I mean, they're joking, and they have this specific style, and they have a lightning round.
Laugh track.
They had laugh tracks. I get real into this stuff, and the dude was playing the Cheers song a few times because he's like, "Oh, this is a Cheers moment," like, because it was dramatic, whatever. So there's different ways to do this.
That's so funny.
Personally, I just like to have a conversation, just like we're doing right now.
Right.
Like, for me, authenticity is, look, and I think this is actually a big point probably. AI is here. AI is probably creating podcasts right now. It's creating advertising. It's creating all kinds of stuff. Awesome. Good. That is freaking great. You know why? Because the more AI content that we're surrounded with, the more that authenticity hits home.
Stands out, yeah.
Yes, because as long as we're here, as long as human beings are around, we want authenticity, we want connection, we want intentionality, and AI cannot create that. AI has its place. Great.
Sure.
But I do believe that the more authentic and real you are, the more that resonates. And the more that we are surrounded with AI, the more we recognize authenticity, and we seek it, and we want it. And I mean, you look at all the technology out there now, and then what are your kids and my kids? They're like buying records and CDs and like things that are old and tangible because they know there's just some human instinct. Like, I want something real. You know, I'm surrounded I'm on a screen all the time, and I'm surrounded by this. I want real stuff. Well, I think real conversation is really important, and people gravitate to that. I mean, I hear that all the time. Like, you know, why I love the podcast because it just seems so real and authentic. And do we get to, you know, I mean, I will, if somebody wants to talk about Schedulefly, sure, I'll talk about it. I mean, we have an interesting story. People will say, well, tell me more. Then we'll go into that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go in and force, like, I'm not going to be like, let me try to figure out how to get them to talk about Schedulefly. No. People pick up on that. You have to just be real and honest and authentic and put yourself out there. And maybe for some people, that's not right. I mean, what you're trying to do at EVRYBDY Studios is the same thing we're trying to do at Schedulefly. We can't serve everybody. We don't want to serve everybody. I don't want somebody using...
Even though the name is EVRYBDY Studios.
EVRYBDY Studios, yeah. And everybody in Charlotte.
We can't serve everybody, even though we're EVRYBDY Studios.
But you want the right customer you're just trying to find them, right? Like right now at Schedulefly, our big problem is awareness. Like, we're trying to find the people that go, oh, that's what I want.
Yeah.
They don't know we exist. A lot of them don't right now. So part of how we get to them is hopefully we keep creating great content on the podcast, and they start looking like, wow, what is this Schedulefly stuff? Who is this guy? What is this stuff? That sounds cool, right? Like, that's who we want to serve. We can't serve everybody. We want to serve people that have the same value set as we do and have the same belief system as we do. And if we can find more of them, then we will grow our business. And a way to find more of them is creating great content that they start listening to, and they find us that way. That is one of the ways that we try to do that. For y'all, there's some people that are just not going to get, like, podcasting, and they're going to go straight to the spread. Okay, move on. Because you know what will happen? It's like anything else. Like, you got to go out there. You want to pick the low-hanging fruit right now. People like me, they're like, hell yeah, dude. You got a studio? Let's do it. I'm in. I get it. Over time, there will be more of that. Over time, there will be more and more companies that are like, dude, you know, somebody's going to sit there and go, some business owner, some CEO is going to go, why don't we have a podcast?
Why are we not doing that?
Well, the numbers say, no. We need to do a podcast. And then they'll be your natural fit.
Yeah. Fortunately, if people want to look into the numbers, they're very supportive.
Yeah, well, true.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's not a huge argument against this stuff. I mean, I get that there are different industries and different missions and goals inside of companies, and maybe some of this stuff doesn't align with that. But for the most part, everything we're talking about, I mean, it's human nature. And I love that you dug into AI because it's such a common topic. It's a common topic across all industries that involve some level of tech, which is pretty much everything now. But people often look at us and are like, "What's AI going to do? How is creation affected by AI?" And it's like, yeah, AI can do that. AI can create, and it's getting better and better and better, and that's great. What it can't do is replicate this experience that
Yeah.
you and I are having.
That's right.
If an audience member wants to watch something that has been created by AI and it meets these different kind of points that they're trying to get out of this consumption, fine. But you and I are not getting this experience through AI creating it. And that, I think, is such a value in the podcasting space. Like you said, it's not always for the audience. It's for us. It's for your guest.
You're not, we use the word podcasting. This is what this really is it's storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, I drew a lot of inspiration early on from Patagonia. I love Patagonia. Patagonia, from way back, has been telling the stories of the people. Think about this. Okay, so you open a Patagonia magazine or you watch a Patagonia film or something. They're sharing stories about the people that happen to use wear their product. But it's never about the product. It's about person. And you watch that and you're like, that's awesome. I love that story. I want to be a part of that story too. If people like that person who climbs or skis or surfs or whatever use Patagonia stuff, I want to be a part of that tribe, right? So you're telling you want to tell stories that build a tribe around what you're doing and what you stand for. Think about this. Like, okay, what if your bank called you and was like, "Hey, Robbie, we got this podcast. We'd love to just have you on the podcast." And the podcast wasn't about like, how do you manage your cash with treasure? It's more like, tell me about your business, man. Like, how cool would that be? Like, how and by the way, how much more would you appreciate your relationship with that bank now that they actually asked you to come on their platform and share your story? Are you going to be more loyal as a customer? Hell yeah.
100. Yep.
Yeah, dude. Like, if I could we have 5,000 restaurants using Schedulefly. If I could have a podcast with every single one of them, I would. It makes them more loyal. It builds a relationship with that. What a great way to build a relationship.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
I call customers. I'm like, hey, we hadn't talked in, a year or whatever. Come on. They're repeat podcast guests. And how do I keep up with my customers now? Like my really important customers, important being like the ones that are our larger customers and things like that. Like, hey, man, let's just do a podcast episode and catch up.
Yeah, I love it.
That's how you stay in touch.
Yeah.
And then you have a time, and it's a time, and we're both going to be, and it's like, instead of being like, yeah, we should catch up sometime. Yeah. How about next Tuesday at 10? Let's just do a podcast. Boom, done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you're not using a platform to share your customers' stories, I truly think you're really, really missing out. And somebody else that would like to do business with that customer that competes with you in your space is going to eventually do that, and you're missing out.
Yeah. Man, you said it better than me, damn it.
Well, yeah.
It's so good though. It's so it just the experience alone. I mean, you and I've talked about this, but like even from a sales perspective, and I know, of course we're always trying to be like authentic, and that's not my goal, but there's a bottom line. But pulling someone on who, is perhaps a target or someone you'd like to be in partnership with or in business with, and you sit down and you talk business in front of a camera, you create some content, you get some clips, and like everything you just said, like they're going to love that.
And they're going to take that content, and their marketing team is going to push that content out. So now your content is reaching their audience, who's now like, well, that's interesting. And then they start listening. Look, I'll give you a very specific example of how that's worked for us. So we have always focused on independent restaurants, always will. But we have franchisees of various brands that use Schedulefly. So Big B Coffee. Big B Coffee is a coffee chain. We're sitting here drinking coffee, so that comes to mind. They're a coffee chain in the Midwest. There's actually one here in Matthews, but they've got like 450 locations. And we have, I don't know, like 15 or 20 or something like that. We would like to have more. Well, so one of the things that we did is we went and we got the CEO of Big B Coffee to, in this, he called in when we were doing it on a screen. He didn't come into the studio, but we recorded it here, and we recorded an episode with the CEO of Big B Coffee to share his story. Now, think about the difference between me going to Big B Coffee and trying to become one of their preferred scheduling providers. Cold. Could we be a preferred scheduling provider? We would really love to. Or I've now had the CEO for an hour. I've built credibility. I've built trust. I've built rapport. I've had an intelligent conversation focused on him and his story. How much easier do you think it is for me to go to them and go, hey, we'd really love to be one of your preferred scheduling providers? Oh, sure. Talk to John or talk to Sarah or whatever, and we'll get you set up.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Oh, yeah.
So now we've done enough of that we have franchise brands come to us and say, could we have our CEO on your podcast? These are brands that we would really like to serve.
Mm-hmm.
We may not have any of their franchisees. Now I'm sitting here with the CEO for an hour. How much easier do you think it is for me to be like after the episode, like, hey man, like we got this scheduling software, like none of your folks use it. Like, could we have a conversation? Hell yeah, dude.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, so yes, I mean,
Yeah.
So when you want to start quantifying, you absolutely can. And when you're big, we have 5 people in our company. When you're a bigger company, you have people that are sitting down with a spreadsheet and doing all this stuff. But again, you gotta push your chips in. If you believe in this, push your chips in and do it for a while. Don't just do a few and be like, I don't know, I'm not seeing because you know how long I've been doing this for 12 years. I mean, I'm not saying now, again, it doesn't take as long these days because people know what podcasts are.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, these relationships that are coming to us now are coming to us because we push the chips in on building content and building a storytelling brand called Restaurant Owners Uncorked, not Schedulefly, not the Schedulefly podcast.
Yeah.
But now we have this coming to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a nice cycle. The podcast grows because we have them on here. They push the content out. More people listen. More people come to us. We build more relationships through our brand, and it's this nice, virtuous cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's I mean, it's the epitome of everything we're about. You live it. You're the highlight. I've got this one client who does his podcast here, and I tell this story all the time, but I don't think I've told it publicly like this. But he and I were having coffee, and he's like, or I said something like, is the podcast working out for you? Are you seeing anything, any kind of uptick anywhere? And he's like, yeah, man. I mean, I picked up a client just recently because of it. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, man. I sat down with this guy, and I go, how'd you hear about us? And he goes, your podcast. And he goes, oh yeah, what episode? And he goes, oh, I don't listen to it. I just saw that you marketed a podcast.
Oh, dude, that's great.
I was like, bam, little brand awareness there. This is perfect. Credibility, a little clip.
Well, okay. So here we are. So, we've been doing this for a long time. I'm currently in the process of, after 18 awesome years of buying out my partners, we've been doing this a long time. And so they're ready for a change, and I'm ready to keep rolling. And part of that, and this has been a long process. Been working on this for, about a year now. But part of what we're going to be doing going forward is leveraging EVRYBDY Studios a lot more, because what we're really good at creating content. We're really good at having awesome conversations. You ought to be good if you've done 600 of these things. You start to figure out like how to
Pick up a
do it
little
pretty
skill
well.
set.
But the problem we have is then we don't have I don't have the bandwidth to then go, okay, let's take this content and get it across all the platforms and take, the most compelling clips and get those out there and get the distribution out there and all the stuff that comes along with that. So we're like halfway in our journey of where we need to be. And where we need to be is doing what y'all do, which is, creating more awareness that this content exists through drawing people in, through compelling clips and things like that. I mean, the best, storytelling brands now have their content everywhere. To your point, they saw that you had a podcast, to the customer that you had. You can't, you go on YouTube and if you find these clips all the time of all these different podcasts and you go, oh, that's interesting. And then you go, and now you know more about that brand. We don't do a good job of that. We need your help doing that going forward. And that's going to be a big part of what we're doing. We're leaning in.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, you and I spoke offline before we started this, and I shared, the evolution of our model. And it was always in my mind as something I wanted to implement in our kind of, soup to nuts white glove service, but that's the marketing of the podcast. It's the targeted distribution. I mean, if you're working with independent podcasters, generally the goal is popularity. It is quantitative. It is as many people as possible. But when you shift over into the B2B, B2C, little more intentional space, intentional meaning they're utilizing the podcast platform as a marketing tool ultimately, then it becomes more targeted, right? It's I always use the example of our client have a drywall podcast. That's not for everybody.
Right.
That's for people who care about drywall, and there's a very select few demographic wise that's going to that's going to resonate with. So we have now shifted over, based on demand, into offering the marketing or the targeted distribution strategy of people's podcasts. That is a very exciting place for us because that is what everybody wants and is trying to figure out. And just real quickly, I just to talk about EVRYBDY Studios for a second, we're positioning ourselves in kind of two areas, and one is, I like to say, just below the affordability line or the cost structure of an audio video production agency. So those are a dime a dozen. There are probably hundreds of them in Charlotte. You can go somewhere and find someone who's a videographer who does high-level editing, high-level motion recording, and all that. Commercials, documentaries, movies, TV shows, all that stuff. That's not us. We position ourselves below an audio video production company because where we are experts is stationary recording. So podcasts, training videos, introductory videos, internal comms videos, like all the things where you're talking either to a camera or to someone else on a camera or in front of a camera. That is stationary recording. You don't need an audio video production company for that.
Yeah.
You go to an audio video production company, you're going to pay 5 times the amount of what we would charge to do the exact same recording at the same quality. So that's our positioning there. And then in the marketing side of things, there's marketing and ad agencies. $50,000 contracts going out for traditional marketing strategies and organization and all these different things. You don't need all that for your podcast.
Yeah.
It's specific. It's one medium that you're sending out. So again, positioned just below that in affordability and structure and strategy and what you need. You don't need all that for your podcast.
That's right. So you mentioned a company, a drywall company that is a customer. Here's the thing. It's a drywall company. This is my point earlier. Whatever your product is, tell the stories of your customers.
Mm-hmm.
Tell your story. there, this is an important medium to. I thoroughly believe this. I don't care what your business or your product is. If you are giving your customers opportunities to share their stories, not just share why you're great, just to
Yeah.
share who they are. You want to serve a lot more customers like that. Whatever your product is, if it's drywall, whatever it is, right? You have sort of like every company has or should have an avatar of like the perfect customer.
Right.
And then the perfect customer is going to, like, if that's your avatar, then other people who are that perfect customer are going to eventually be drawn, hopefully, to your company.
And relate to the current customer.
That's
who's
right.
satisfied.
Who's satisfied. And so, and this is my second go at entrepreneurship. It's starting a business. Our previous business, totally different industry, First Research, but we had a very targeted approach. We have a very targeted approach with Schedulefly. I think most businesses, an independent restaurant, that if you've got a 50-page menu and you're just trying to be all things to all people, you're going to do a lot of stuff average. But if you know this is what we're here for, this is the kind of food, whatever the price point is, if you have a very clear focus of who you are and who you want to serve, if it's a restaurant, if it's a studio, if it's a scheduling software, and you have that really clear focus and you know the perfect customer and you lock in, you're going to find a way to be successful. And if you are doing that, that's when you can start sharing the stories of those customers, and you will draw more of that perfect customer to your brand. I believe that till the day I die. I think I've seen it work in business twice now, and I would never start a business not having that clear focus. And I would never, there's no way however long we do this Schedulefly thing, if I do something else after this, I'll be telling the stories of the people we serve. 1,000%.
Well, I think you're the beginning of a series of My Studios podcast, the one that we're on currently, where I'm going to pull in all of our clients. And,
yeah, dude.
And do what we're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, I mean, this has been,
go ahead.
This is enhanced our, we've been talking about doing this for a while, and now we're finally here, and now we're talking, and now it's a relationship enhancer. It's a great way to share what you're doing. It's a great way for me to share what we're doing. I mean, this is, yeah, absolutely, man. How many podcasts do you have right now? You've got everybody in Charlotte. You've got Champagne Problems. Is it just those two?
Yeah, and then there's original. We have a section of our company called Original Content, and the Riff, the music podcast, is another one that I personally am associated with.
Okay, does Liz Brigham do anything with that, or
she will?
She will.
Yeah, we're just getting it right. We're just getting it going. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, those are it.
So. And Champagne Problems. So you're still doing that. I know you kind of like slowed down on that for a little while.
I didn't slow down. I've been doing it every 2 weeks.
Okay, you have
for 4.5 years.
I thought at the end of the year you were like rebranding it or something like that.
No, I mean I shifted kind of what I talk about.
Okay,
but I didn't stop. I didn't slow down on the releases and recordings.
Okay,
every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
I haven't missed one, and I don't know if I've ever missed one.
Okay. How do you get people to come on that? Like, how is it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's super applicable to anybody starting a podcast. And it's not the answer anybody wants to hear because there's no real code to be cracked. There's no like, all right, here's how you do it. But the way that you do it is consistency, and it's building your brand and trustworthiness and over time. And I always use the example of, we had, I think it was like our 3rd or 4th episode, we had Chris Herron, who was a former NBA basketball player. They did a 30 for 30 on. He battled heroin addiction, but he played for the Celtics. He's a well-known dude, has an insane story. And he works in recovery now, and he's
Yeah.
got like a fund, and he does some great work. But we were connected to him and got him on our show. It was like our fourth guest, and utilizing his name got us another guy or gal. And then you take those two and you go to somebody else you're targeting, and you have to be reasonable. You know, don't go for the A-lister right away. And then you kind of pitch who you've had on, and you just slowly kind of build these building blocks. And it's like, all right, these three people will make sense to that person. And you pitch I've had these three people, and we talked about this, and I would love to, you know, talk about the same thing over here with you. And they're going, oh, well, it must be, you know, they were on there. So, and that's just how I did it. And I think there was a lot of unintentional strategy. I mean, there was strategy, but like, it was like, some of it just kind of worked out, and I looked back and went, oh, that worked out because of that.
Yeah.
So I'll try that this next time. And then, of course, some personal stuff, like with Gabby Reese. Like, I mean, just the fact that I was involved with XPT got her to kind of throw me a bone. And she came on, and all of a sudden, I'm using her name to get all kinds of other guests.
Yeah.
And then once I got all those guests, she helped me get her husband layered on, who wasn't going to do it up front. So it's, again, there's no shortcut, I guess, is the short answer. All right, brother. Well, thanks for coming in and talking shop.
Talking shop, man. This is a good shop to talk in, dude. You
I
got to
like
come
it.
down to EVRYBDY Studios if you haven't been.
Come on down.
What's the address here?
2150 Park Drive.
Park Drive, not Park Road.
Drive, 28204 in the Elizabeth neighborhood, right off 7th Street.
In the McShane Partners building.
2150.
It's a freaking cool studio.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good place to hang out. Plus, you can walk over to Rosemont to eat lunch.
That's right. There's good snacks and coffee here, too. Clean restrooms.
Yep.
All right. It's a wrap.
That's a wrap.